When does something begin to exist? Something begins to exist the moment when God brings it into being. Now, this seems self explanatory, but when we look at it deeper, when God brings something into being, he does so by his word. His word is what makes it actual, what speaks it into existence in reality. But for example, if we look at human beings, when God speaks, he also breathes life into the soul. And so the life is what comes about by God breathing upon that very thing. So when at the moment of conception, God breathes life and he creates the soul, and then that soul begins to exist. If we look at other creations, maybe we plant, maybe we all of a sudden have a fruit beginning to grow on a tree. Well, when does it begin to exist? It begins to exist the moment God touches it, and the function by which the tree growing reaches a certain point, receives a certain amount of sunlight and water, and when it is season, when God declares it to be so, and the tree has operated based upon everything around it and from its inner nature of how it was designed, a fruit begins to exist the moment that God unleashes, speaks, and allows the tree to begin to bear fruit. And so things begin to exist the moment that God brings it into existence. Nothing can, in and of itself, come into being or come into existence on its own. God is always behind the scenes. Now, God is, just because God sustains everything and he's behind bringing about everything, does not mean he is the cause of everything, right? Just because he's brought all human beings into the world through a certain act that needs to happen when a male and a female procreate, as that occurs, it doesn't mean that God therefore is the cause behind how that specific person interacts with the world and goes about the world. God is not responsible for evil and sin. And so something begins to exist the moment God brings it into existence. Nothing can in and of itself be brought forth on its own. God can set up the laws and the functioning by which things can bring things forth. However, God is still behind the scenes, moving and developing the form, the frame, and the function of what is to come about. Because all things abide by the metaphysical laws that God sets up as well as the physical laws. And just because things are brought out into being and we may not even notice it, or maybe we begin to notice it, when we think more deeply, we need to understand that God is always behind the scenes. Nothing can come to be on its own. Even when God has set certain things up to follow certain laws, those certain laws can't operate on their own. God must sustain those laws and allow things to come to be in order for those things to actually be. Because anything that can exist apart from God would, in its sense, be a little God. And we know that the ultimate definition of sin and evil obviously comes by way of self. But what is self? Self is the striving, the pursuit, the want to be as a little g God. And so that's exactly what something is when it is by its own. It is just a little God. God, even though God sustains all things and he is the one who brings forth all things, nothing can be brought forth on its own. He establishes the laws, but he still works through the laws to bring out certain aspects that he knows will come to be and by which those things need to abide by, because God has declared those laws to be as such and how things should proceed. So may we just give praise and glory to him who is the self-existent one, who sustains all things, who brings all things forth, and is good, perfect, and pure. And may all come to know the one true God by believing Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior and repenting of their sins.